Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Danny Seabright, president of the US-UAE Business Council. We're a nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C., and we wake up every day focused on promoting the bilateral trade and investment relationship between the United States and the United Arab Emirates. We're delighted today to bring this virtual trade mission, if you will, to New Jersey. We have done this with a number of states in the United States already just in the last year, as we have taken advantage of the situation with COVID to create virtual opportunities for businesses in the United States to learn more about the UAE as an opportunity. We're particularly delighted in the wake of the historic Abraham Accords to have friends from Israel join us today as well to talk about trilateral cooperation. We'll have with us today Mark Levinson, the chair of the New Jersey Israel Commission, Andrew Gross, the executive director, New Jersey Israel Commission, Jose Lozano, president and CEO, Choose New Jersey, the Honorable Tahisha Wei, Secretary of State, State of New Jersey, His Excellency Abdullah Shaheen, UAE Consul General in New York, Bouni Kahadi, Consul for Cultural Affairs in North America, Consulate General of Israel in New York City, and David Rosenberg, CEO and co-founder of AeroFarms, one of our member companies who has been successful both in Israel and in the UAE. We'll have short introductory remarks. We'll have some more detailed remarks, if you will, by our three main panelists about business opportunities, and then we will go into a Q&A discussion, and all of you could, if you could please use the Q&A or the chat function to raise any questions that you might have. Mark, with that, over to you. Thank you for being such a great partner in putting this webinar together. Over to you, please, for your remarks, your welcome remarks.
Thank you, Danny. You've been a terrific partner, your whole team. We're so excited about this New Jersey, UAE, Israel collaboration and cooperation. This is the first of many programs, and Danny, we're very grateful to you and your team for your effort. And first of all, I want to thank our great governor of the state of New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy. He's been so supportive of the New Jersey Israel Commission and the efforts, not only his amazing trip that we took a few years ago. Jose Lozano is with us as well. Terrific, terrific job by our governor. And I'm so thankful and appreciative of our Secretary of State, Tahisha Wei, who's here with us today. Tahisha, Secretary of State Wei, has been terrific, a tremendous supporter and colleague with us on all our endeavors. But specifically, the Secretary took a very meaningful and impactful trip to Israel before the pandemic, and that has made her an even stronger supporter and friend of ours. And whenever we want her, she comes here and shows up. So thank you very, very much, Secretary of State. The trade numbers. New Jersey and Israel have averaged about $1.3 billion a year in trade over the last several years. That's a huge number. New Jersey and Israel, obviously, some of each other's major trading partners. We believe that with efforts such as this, we can strive for those same numbers between the great state of New Jersey and the UAE. We believe the trilateral relationship can make 1 and 1 + 1 = 7. So we're really very, very excited about this. The businesses that we have in New Jersey, we think there could be terrific collaborations, biomedical, healthcare, renewable energy, high-tech logistics, and even food. Plus, of course, academic partnerships and cultural exchanges. So we're very excited about this. It's my pleasure to introduce my partner, my colleague, Andrew Gross, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Israel Commission. Andrew was raised in New Jersey. He went to George Washington University, and Andrew spent 7 years as a political director at the Israeli consulate in New York. And I worked extensively with Andrew at the consulate. The good news for us is that while Danny Dayan, the previous consul general and a good friend of the governor, was not happy when we stole Andrew over to New Jersey, the good news is the acting consul general, Israel Nitzan, Booni's boss, he couldn't do anything about it because Andrew was already with us. So Andrew, please offer some of your own welcoming remarks, and I'm very excited to be here with all of you.
Mark, thank you so much, and that was very generous of you, and I just want to greet everyone, and again, thank you for the kind words. It's really, I think this is a historic opportunity to bring New Jersey, the UAE, and Israel together, especially following the Abraham Accords. And I think today we really take advantage of the amazing opportunities that are happening across the Middle East and, of course, right here in the United States. I want to thank again the US-UAE Business Council for putting this very, very important event together. Mark, you've been a tremendous leader and ally of the Commission and its efforts, which I think we've seen really flourishing. Secretary U.A.E, I couldn't re-emphasize more what Mark said. You've been a huge ally of the U.S.-Israel, New Jersey-Israel relationship. And I think we see that today in this program really reiterated strongly. And of course, even though he's not with us, Governor Murphy, who has been an absolutely amazing ally in these efforts, a true internationalist, both in his personal life and his professional life as a former diplomat, and as someone who cares deeply about this engagement in the world, and of course, Israel. Consul General Shaheen, it's great to see you again. And I know we spoke before the program, but of course, we look forward to welcoming you in New Jersey and working further with you. The Commission was established over 30 years ago to oversee all of New Jersey's relations with Israel. We've really achieved quite a bit last week with Jose and the support of Secretary U.A.E. We announced Ben Gurion University opening a joint campus in New Jersey with the New Jersey Institute of Technology. We have Israel Aircraft Industries doing a major project in Atlantic City next week. So we have huge projects that are going on. I look forward to a lot more. And my partner in crime in a lot of this has been Jose Lozano, the CEO of Choose New Jersey. And Jose has also been an absolutely massive advocate, not just for the New Jersey-Israel relationship, but again, for all these international initiatives for New Jersey around the world. I don't think that any state has been so successful like New Jersey has internationally. And I think that's thanks to Jose's leadership. And we are leading great trade missions, former head of the transition for Governor Murphy and the former chief of staff over at Hackensack Marine Health. So Jose, over to you.
Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to participate. And I think what is a really historic opportunity to really bridge these trilateral sort of relationships. You know, Choose New Jersey is definitely it feels as I look around all the boxes, I'm literally the baby of the organization out of all of you. The organization Choose New Jersey has only been around for about 10 years. And our main focus as a not-for-profit organization is to attract companies to New Jersey and calling New Jersey home, especially those that want to enter the U.S. market. And as Andrew mentioned, we have done such a greater emphasis on our international partnerships, be it Israel and now with the U.A.E. and folks from around the world, because we know that New Jersey has something that's extremely unique to offer. And we offer between the rich diversity, the location, the talent, the workforce, and just wonderful areas to sort of raise a family. And so I have this great distinction of being a part of this sort of group today and finding out ways that we can strengthen the opportunities for New Jersey companies to maybe explore out to the U.A.E. and vice versa, and how we can have companies from the U.A.E. try to have a footprint here in New Jersey. And so, but now I have a really great distinction of introducing the Secretary of State. And for those who may not be as familiar with New Jersey's government structure, the Secretary of State is literally one of the most important members of the governor's cabinet. She leads some of the most vital components that distinguishes New Jersey from the rest of the country. And some of those areas we so cherish dearly in New Jersey. So the arts, the culture, tourism, and one of the it's a one-stop shop for companies that are actually here in New Jersey to help navigate state government and so forth. And more importantly, it's the elections process and its integrity. So we are so lucky to have Madam Secretary here in New Jersey and actually leading the Secretary of State's office. And I'm personally lucky to call her as a good friend. So Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Jose, especially for your leadership with Choose New Jersey. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to the US-UAE Business Council for inviting me to participate in this important and historic discussion. I would also like to recognize the New Jersey Israel Commission, led by Mark and Andrew, and of course, Choose New Jersey, for co-sponsoring this program. And finally, I would like to salute our governor for his support in this sector. Now, in December 2019, I had the distinct pleasure to travel to Israel with a delegation of secretaries of state from around our country. It was my first visit to the Middle East, and my time there left a tremendous impression on me. Especially after this past year, it is significant that we strengthen the ties of friendship across the globe and encourage more meaningful exchanges and critical business opportunities like today. My responsibilities as Secretary of State do include encouraging New Jersey's exports, enhancing cultural exchange, promoting tourism, and more. And there is no doubt that together we can unlock tremendous potential to our mutual benefit that will take advantage of New Jersey's strength and the new reality of peace in the Middle East. And when it comes to both Israel and in the United Arab Emirates, we see two nations, each roughly the same population as New Jersey, with so much in common. Thriving high-tech industries, major logistic hubs, advanced medical facilities, and a deep desire to engage one another at a higher level. With this, if you could indulge me with a few facts to share about our business relationships. Last year, New Jersey exported $753 million worth of goods to the U.A.E. Of the 50 states, we ranked as the top 5th exporter, which was also ranked as the 15th largest export market for New Jersey. Our top exports included electrical machinery, industrial equipment, high-tech products, and vehicles. On the Israeli side, our exports ranked at $327 million worth of goods, with similar types of products being sent over. That being said, our total trade volume reached over $1.3 billion. In both cases, New Jersey's global leadership as a major port helps to drive business and growth in all three of our regions. But these relationships go beyond business and trade. Someday soon, we will see new opportunities to travel and experience each other's cultures firsthand again. And in closing, our friends and neighbors near and far have experienced difficulty and loss over the past year. But we have also seen incredible examples of heroism, compassion, and grace among people of every background and worship community. I hope as we all emerge from this pandemic, we can maintain and nurture the spirit of unity, friendship, and mutual understanding that we have tried to foster in this time of need. Once again, thank you for allowing me to participate, and blessings to all.
Thank you, Secretary U.A.E. And before Consul General Shaheen begins, I just want to, on behalf of the group, offer condolences today, Consul General, for the loss of your Minister of Finance. He died unexpectedly this morning, and we extend our best and condolences in that regard. Thank you so much. Over to you, Consul General.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for having me here today. It's a real pleasure to be with everyone from the US-UAE Business Council, Choose New Jersey, and the New Jersey Israel Commission, Israel Consulate in New York, and the Honorable Tasha U.A.E. These online engagements are a great way to get to know one another, and I hope you find today's discussion informative and useful. As a Consul General, I'm tasked with managing traditional consular services and making sure that Emiratis in the US have what they need. However, the best part of my job is doing what I'm doing here today, speaking with Americans. 2021 is a big year for the UAE. This December marks the 50th anniversary of the UAE's founding. Today, I will give you a brief overview of the history that shaped the UAE so you can get a glimpse of the foundation and values that the country was built upon and how this informs our friendship with the US. Next, I will dig deeper into the ties that bridge the UAE and the US, from economic relationship to social and cultural initiatives, and highlight some recent milestones that we have achieved together. I'm constantly amazed by how similar our cultures are, the values upon which the US was founded, opportunity, prosperity, community, are also what guided the UAE leadership when the nation was established 5 decades ago. When the UAE is mentioned, many people think of oil, and they also ask, what is an emirate? Well, an emirate is a small city, state, and the UAE has 7 of them. Each emirate has its own laws and customs, but all 7 are united under a federal government, similar to the states here in the US. The emirates you probably hear the most about are Abu Dhabi, the capital and the largest emirate, as well as Dubai, which is the 2nd largest and the most populous. Oil wasn't always something associated with the UAE. In fact, for a very long time, the UAE economy was dependent on a local pearl diving industry. The pearling sustained the country's economy until the 1940s, when artificial pearls were invented. This was an early lesson for us in the importance of economic diversification, which is something we continue to prioritize to this day. That's part of the reasons we're working so hard to diversify our energy mix with major projects in solar and other renewable power sources. As a result of this dynamic approach, the UAE stands as the 2nd largest economy in the Arab world, which is no small feat considering we're only 50 years old and have about 10 million people. That's roughly the population of New Jersey. The US was one of the first countries to establish formal diplomatic relations with the UAE, and these quick steps to build ties led to today's strong growing allies. Our countries share a robust and growing trade and commercial relationship, much of which now has a little direct relationship to the UAE oil exports. The UAE has been the United States' top export destination for the entire Middle East and North Africa region for 12 years in a row. The UAE trades with every US state, including New Jersey, and as Secretary of State mentioned, 2019, New Jersey exported nearly $1 billion in goods and services to the Emirates, making it between 5th to 7th largest exporter to the UAE among all 50 states that year. Beyond trade, the UAE-New Jersey relationship spans many sectors. As a close friend and partner, the UAE has provided support to New Jersey communities in need. For example, the UAE was proud to pledge $4.5 million to assist with the recovery projects in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. These projects include upgrading computer equipment in dozens of New Jersey schools and funding the construction of state-of-the-art community soccer fields in Atlantic City and Absorbery Park. Volunteers from the UAE Takatuf program also partner with Habitat for Humanity to help repair homes devastated by Sandy. These are just few examples of the partnership that make UAE-New Jersey ties so dynamic and strong. And similar bilateral initiatives are taking place between the UAE and the state across the US. As I mentioned earlier, 2021 marks the UAE 50th anniversary. It also marks 50 years of friendship between UAE and US. Cooperation between our countries has led to some remarkable achievements over the years, and I would like to highlight few of them for you here today. To begin, I'm sure some of you have heard about the recent diplomatic breakthrough in the Middle East. Last year, with support from US, the U.A.E. and Israel signed the historic Abrahamic Accord, which established diplomatic ties between our countries. I don't need to tell you that the Middle East, where we are all too familiar with the discord and conflict. That's why the signing of the Abrahamic Accord was a major win, not just for the U.A.E. and Israel, but for the future prospect of the region. The agreement reflects the U.A.E. belief that like-minded countries must work together to expand opportunity, security, and prosperity for everyone. As a starting point for a new and achievable vision for the region. And we look forward to building on this accomplishment with our US partners. But this wasn't the only milestone we reached in 2020. Last year, with the help of the US academic partners, the U.A.E. successfully launched the Arab world's first spacecraft to Mars. In fact, the U.A.E. probe, which is called HOPE or Al-Amal in Arabic, entered into orbit around Mars just last month. This picture on the right shows images that HOPE has captured of Mars as it orbits the planet. Each color represents light collected at a different ultraviolet wavelength and provides information about Mars' upper atmosphere. The name of the probe is fitting because this mission is providing hope to an entire generation of young people in the Middle East who are tired of conflict and division and who wants to apply their skills and talents in positive and productive ways. I'm personally inspired by the women who make up 80% of Emirates Mars mission science team. Truly, they are creating a legacy that will inspire the next generation of women scientists and engineers across the U.A.E. and the Arab world. Closer to home, the U.A.E. is leading the way in promoting a culture of inclusion and acceptance. In the Middle East, 2019, the U.A.E. welcomed Pope Francis to Abu Dhabi, which marked the first visit by a sitting pope to the Arabian Peninsula, the birthplace of Islam. And this year, we broke ground on the Abrahamic Family House, a new interfaith center in Abu Dhabi consisting of mosque, church, and synagogue that will bring together followers of different religions in one space like never before. In line with this inclusive outlook, we are expanding our partnership with organizations like Special Olympics. The U.A.E. hosted in the 2019 Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, which was the first time the event had been held in the Middle East. And we continue to build on this momentum by supporting inclusion initiatives such as Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools programs. Finally, the U.A.E. is working closely with the U.S. partners and the international community to address the COVID-19 pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, the U.A.E. diplomats coordinated with our counterparts at the U.S. mission in Abu Dhabi to ensure that all U.S. nationals in the U.A.E. were sent back safely to home and vice versa. Now, as a global vaccine effort continues to ramp up, the U.A.E. is leveraging its world-class logistics network to help distribute milestones of World Health Organization provided vaccines doses to countries in need. Looking ahead to later this year, the U.S. will participate in Expo 2020 Dubai, the world's first fair to be held in the Middle East. The U.A.E. Ministry of International Cooperation and the U.S. Department of State work together to prepare the U.S. pavilion, and I'm excited to see these efforts come to fruition when Expo opens in October. And I'm taking this opportunity to invite everyone who's actually attending today to come and visit, and especially your Honorable Secretary of State, Andrew, Mark. I would like to really invite you all, hopefully, for this Expo. As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, the U.A.E. friendship with the US is built upon shared values and a vision for a better future. I hope this overview has provided a bit of insight into how this shared outlook has translated into real partnership that help put the region on a brighter path and brought benefits to Emiratis and Americans alike. The UAE-US partnership has resulted in many historic achievements, and I'm confident that by working together, moving forward, we can accomplish even more. Thank you all.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for those wonderful comments and that introduction for many on this call to the UAE. Bouni Kahavi, I lived in Israel for 3 years as a US diplomat, traveled there probably 50 times in my career, worked on Israel-US relations and Arab relations for the last almost 40 years. I never thought we'd see what happened in my lifetime in September. Please tell us how it's affected your life and your hope and vision for the trilateral cooperation between our three great countries. Over to you, Bouni.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction and for inviting me to join this panel, this important panel this afternoon. It's my pleasure to be in panel with the Honorable Tahisha U.A.E, Secretary of State of New Jersey, and His Excellency Abdullah Shaheen, United Arab Emirates Consul General in New York, and to discuss emerging businesses opportunities among New Jersey, United Arab Emirates, and Israel.
Bouni, can you unmute yourself? Sorry, you had a little glitch there apparently. Just unmute yourself, Bouni. There you go. Go ahead.
Sorry. So I want to thank also the participant in this panel and all those who have joined us today. Let me begin with a few words about the remarkable relationship between Israel and New Jersey, which are stronger than ever. The state of Israel and the state of New Jersey share many commonalities in their geographic size and number of population, but we also share the same spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship, of excellence in research and development. We share a business culture of tachlis, be direct, to the point, honest, and frank. In the last 3 years, we had the pleasure of hosting the visits of Governor Murphy and Secretary of State U.A.E, and we thank them for making this relationship a priority. Choose New Jersey, together with the New Jersey Israel Commission, visited Israel last year, and we value very much and appreciate the Commission as an important partner in promoting our bilateral relations. The historic and groundbreaking signing of the Abraham Accords by Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain have established a visionary future of peace and prosperity for the Middle East that will serve to advance additional agreements with other Arab countries. The Accords mark a new beginning for the Middle East, representing an alternative for our troubled region. This historic agreement is an important and significant milestone that will serve to advance security and stability across the Middle East. Israel and the United Arab Emirates are both young countries that have developed dynamic and thriving economies in just a few decades. Both are, like New Jersey, at the cutting edge of innovation and technology and share the same entrepreneurial spirit. Israel and the United Arab Emirates have given priority to the well-being of their own citizens. The Accords are an opportunity to move our relations and interaction to a new level. Beyond the diplomatic implications, the Abraham Accords will encourage more people-to-people engagement alongside cooperation in business, science, innovation, and tourism. We see this dialogue occur not only between our governments and leadership, but also among the people, in person and on social media, as well in the initial dialogues between businesses, startups, universities, and research centers. We are looking for ways to work together in addressing the needs of the people in our region in different areas. but also in combating COVID-19. In the midst of the global pandemic, combining forces and finding common ground has never been more urgent, and the Abraham Accords are set to generate quick results. We thank the former US administration for facilitating this relation, and we appreciate very much the commitment expressed by the new administration to continue promoting our peace efforts. It is a testimony to the central role of the United States in promoting peace in the Middle East and around the world. We are also grateful for the strong bipartisan support given by our political and community leaders here in the United States to our peace efforts. We should also thank our partners, the United Arab Emirates, for the leadership role in advancing peace in the Middle East. Yes, of course, the governments have signed the agreements that serve as the basis for the bilateral relations. But now it is the energy of the people to develop and build this relationship. People reaching out to each other, looking for ways to collaborate in science, technology, and culture. We aim to leverage our presence in New Jersey to encourage the state's political leadership, business, and community leaders to cultivate the new relationship between our countries and the real partnership in different areas: business, healthcare, technology, tourism, and etc. I think this event today is an opportunity for a dialogue that can benefit the people of New Jersey, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates. And I thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this event. Thank you.
Booney, thank you so much for those inspirational remarks. Let's hear from David Rosenberg now, who's the CEO of a New Jersey-based company who is very successful doing business in Israel and the UAE. David, over to you. Tell us a little bit about AeroFarm.
Yeah, proud to be part of this session. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor. So AeroFarms, we're an ag tech company. Behind me is one of our farms. We're a vertical farming company. And we're very much on the tech side. We innovate with a lot of partners like Bell Labs here in New Jersey. We have partnerships with Dell Technologies, Accenture, BASF, all over the world. We also have quite a few partnerships in Israel, a big lighting company. We're also been part of the Bird Foundation. And we announced we're building a $100 million project in the U.A.E. So our headquarters are in New Jersey. We have 4 buildings in Newark, 4 locations in Newark, including our headquarters R&D and prototyping and commercial farming. But we're very much committed to the region. And here, the big point is we see the positive change. The peace accord is really meaningful for me, really meaningful to the company. I think it's really a testament to long-lasting change and huge economic success. We want to be part of positive change. We want to vote with our wallets. We want to vote with our business. And just our appreciation for the leadership of the UAE, we decided that's our regional hub is in the UAE to expand all over the MENA region. And it's a great partnership. We're partnered with Audio, specifically in Abu Dhabi, where we're building this project. We also partner with Dubai Holdings. In fact, one of my board members is the chief investment officer of Dubai Holdings. So we really brought in money at the parent level and also at the project level on both Dubai and Abu Dhabi, among their other great emirates within the region. And I want to build on something that Booney shared, which is like the cultural similarities between the US, UAE, and Israel is as an entrepreneur, and this is my 4th Change the World company I've been part of. I actually used to work at BRM, which is an Israeli incubator that incubated Checkpoint and a few other internet infrastructure companies. But what one looks at is where is that spirit of innovation? Where is that spirit of, I want to be first, I want to be a leader? We certainly have it in the US. We most regularly think about Silicon Valley and the innovation there. New Jersey has great innovation as well. We certainly think about it in Israel. There's great, like in ag tech, you go to any conference, about 15% of the speakers are Israeli. There's great ag tech innovation, but also across the board, great startups, the startup nation. And in the UAE, just think of the pictures that His Excellency showed of the architecture there. It's some of the most wonderful architecture in the world. And just this spirit, though, is let's be first. So as an entrepreneur, as a business person, one thinks of, all right, we're the early adopters. We're the people that say, I want to be first. And the UAE really embraces that mantra. And it's great to go there. Some parts of the world, people say, hey, you know, make it tried and true, come back to me. I'll be your like 15th person adopting a new technology. But in the UAE, it embraces that spirit of let's being first. So for a multitude of reasons, it's the right choice for us. Also, the culture is changing. So His Excellency shared how there were 80% of the people working on the Mars mission were women on that science piece. Here too, I see it here in the US, it's in New Jersey, it's tough to get women in STEM. And we're seeing in the Middle East, a lot of people applying for jobs with STEM backgrounds that are female. So embrace that, look forward to working with them and hiring them. I'll share, we had our first, we have now, I think 4 people in the UAE, and we're just breaking ground on this facility in April. The first position, we had 9,000 people apply. Our second position, we had 2,000 people apply. So there's tremendous interest to be part of our journey, embracing US companies, joining in the UAE. It's a great place. Our people in the US that want to go over there, they're raising their hands, and there's a big line of people that want to join there. But both very honored to be part of the innovation going on in Israel, in the UAE, certainly our hometown in New Jersey. Tremendous opportunities between all of us to work together. And if anyone out there has questions on how we're doing it, our partners with Audio, with Dubai Holdings, happy to share. These are great partners. They do what they say they're going to do. In Israel, we have great innovation partners in moving technology in a meaningful way to impact the world. So again, just proud to be here and happy to answer any questions and be a resource for others in how to be successful between our country, the UAE, and Israel.
David, thank you, and that's so important that you're happy to be a resource for others, because it's very needed, and it's a great thing to have on the webinar today. Secretary Wei, you heard Consul General Shaheen talk a little bit about the UAE's diversifying economy, the common values that we have. I think that came through loud and clear in the efforts that the UAE is making to be open and inclusive and help with COVID, help the world deal with the worst effects of COVID. And then you went to Israel on this cultural and economic mission last, a year or so ago now. Can you share some thoughts on your view of the importance of common values, not just to the bilateral relationship with the US and Israel, but how they can transcend and be important in this new trilateral relationship that we're creating between the 2 countries, between the 3 countries?
Yes, thank you for that question, Danny. Both the UAE, Israel, and New Jersey are places that have that commonality of valuing respect, tolerance, and of course, a cultural understanding. And in New Jersey, I'm honored to oversee various cultural commissions, not only the New Jersey Israel Commission, but I can name, by way of example, the Hellenic Commission, and work with diverse communities across our great state to celebrate all heritages which unite us. New Jersey is a state that is so diverse, and I'm proud to work daily to promote that. On a side note, I just wanted to quickly salute David for his words about the encouragement and inclusiveness of women with his business. I know that it's an honor for me to serve in a cabinet which for the first time under the governor's leadership is first female majority. So I just want to now go back to my delegation trip to Israel. And I have to say, I was so amazed when I visited Israel and saw not only Jewish people. It was significant and important that secretaries got to engage and interact with Muslims, with Christians, Druze, and others just living side by side. Our world is not perfect, but I can say that the Abraham Accords is definitely a prime example, in addition to what I saw in Israel, of how we can bring different folk together to strengthen our society and create peace and understanding across our communities.
Secretary Wei, thank you. Before we go and delve into the UAE and Israel a little bit more, is there anything you want to highlight about New Jersey's economic strengths and areas in which it's seeking to grow its economy, so we can understand how we might help this partnership between the three countries grow in New Jersey even more?
Sure. Like the UAE, New Jersey is also a regional market hub connecting the entire tri-state region and the East Coast. And one of the important connections comes through our strong tourism sector, which falls under my Department of State. And speaking pre-pandemic, some numbers that we, are thankful and proud of is that New Jersey welcomed approximately 116.2 million visitors in 2019. And over the past decade, we've witnessed visitation increase by 50 million person trips, which is equivalent to a 75% increase during this economic expansion. And with this, visitor spending in New Jersey grew to reach $46.4 billion, marking 10 straight years of growth. And we credit much of this expansion to our efforts to diversify our marketing and promote specific sectors such as, let's say, the arts and the culinary spaces. So while we already had several flights per day between Newark and Israel pre-pandemic, we should work to increase our tourism with the UAE. To my understanding, and I do commend the UAE for announcing that flights between Newark and the Emirates will return on June 1st. This is an important and significant economic opportunity for both of us, and I look forward futuristically to enhancing this cooperation. Thank you.
Secretary U.A.E, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time on the webinar today. Mark Levinson, you wanted to make a comment with regard to Booney and Israel, and then we're going to go to Consul General Shaheen to make a few more comments about UAE's diversification.
Absolutely. I actually did want to, before we say that, thank His Excellency Shaheen for the kind invitation to the Secretary of State, Jose, Andrew, and myself. We're going to take you up on that. I'll be in Israel in June, and maybe we'll make a left turn to Dubai or right turn, depending which way it is. So it's really it's terrific. I mean, I just want to say about Booney in terms of what he does at the consulate. He's a veteran since 1995. He served in the diplomatic service, and the New York consulate is the most important consulate for Israel. Clearly, New Jersey is the most important state for Booney. There are some other states as well: New York, Ohio, Delaware, Pennsylvania. Booney knows where his bread is buttered here, and he's done a great job in terms of New Jersey-Israel relationship, and we're really very, very appreciative of that. And we'll talk a little further later on some of the other issues.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Consul General Shaheen, some of those on our webinar today may know Abu Dhabi as the producer of oil and Dubai as trade, a tourism and travel hub, but they may be less familiar with some of the ways that the UAE is working to diversify its economy for the future. We had a webinar this morning with the three titans of Abu Dhabi industry who are creating the new Hydrogen Alliance. Fascinating discussion about how hydrogen is going to fuel our world in the very near term. Just wondering if you could say a few words about the diversification efforts, and with AeroFarms on the call, the importance of ag tech to that effort as well.
Well, thank you, Danny. As I mentioned during the PowerPoint, the local pearl diving industry sustained the UAE economy until the 1940s. With artificial pearl were invented, and one of the UAE primary means of subsistence disappeared. This was an early lesson for us in the importance of economic diversification, which is something that we continue to prioritize to today. The UAE is continuing to diversify by inventing and investing in renewable energy, food security, technology, education, space exploration, etc. All areas of potential cooperation. Diversification contributes to the knowledge-based economy in the UAE creates jobs and more opportunities for young people, Danny.
Okay, thank you. Mark, Booney, do you want to react to that, offer a comment to that, and maybe weave in some thoughts that you have on innovation and collaboration for the future as well? Booney, you want to go first, and then Mark?
Yeah, so what I can say is that from what I read and see from my the reports from my colleagues in the Emirates, there are a lot of happening actually right now, and it's the pace is very fast between Israel and the Emirates, and it means that there is a big potential for doing business and commercial opportunities. But I wanna say that we have to understand that the government, at the end of the day, in my view, is someone who's built the frame, but the people and the leaders of communities, economic communities, etc., they have to make sure to fill these frames with real things and really so all the people and nations who participate are getting the benefits. And I think we are on a strong way right now, strong direction right now between Israel and the Emirates. And I'm saying this even though that we all know what is the political situation right now in Israel. Just yesterday we had another election. And I think that a strong economic relationship, and when everybody benefits from the relationship, this is the key for strong relationship between two countries. And here I think it's the place where New Jersey can come in and find opportunities and join forces with Israel and the Emirates and really build, this triangle across the Atlantic and the Mediterranean.
If I could add just to that, I mean, as a business person, I see the piece going on. And again, I think it's up to us to signal what excites us and signal the opportunity. So that makes us at Aero Farms want to go faster, want to go stronger. And it's not just between Israel and the UAE. It was mentioned Bahrain, but it's going to open up in the region. The leadership starts with Israel and the UAE. So we want to be there. I think other business leaders should want to be there. There's going to be great economic opportunities. You see when you talk to people on the street, talk about the people building on what Booney says, that's when you get a feeling of what's changing. And people want the peace. People want to move forward. They want to push education. They see technology going. There's a lot of investment in education in the UAE, and we're working on different partnerships with different universities. Same with Israel. There is a lot of commonalities here, and I highly encourage business leaders to take advantage of these relationships and really step forward.
Thank you. Mark, you wanted to say something here about reaction to what Booney and Consul General Shaheen said.
Yes, so it's really, the magnitude of what's gone on here is absolutely amazing. I was privileged to be in the South Lawn of the White House for the signing. Your Excellency, I met many of your country persons there, and the warmth, really, not only from the business community. New Jersey Israel Commission is mainly about business, cultural, educational, scientific, but from the Jewish community perspective at large, not just in New Jersey, and from the Israeli community in New Jersey. The reaction has been unbelievable. The signing of the Abraham Accords in September 2020, in my mind, and what has followed, has been one of the most significant pieces of good news that happened during this pandemic. And the magnitude of this should not be underestimated. While we're here talking about business, we must understand that the warmth of this peace between the UAE and Israel is something that really hasn't happened before, except for the very beginning year or two after the Egyptian peace treaty. And the warmth of the peace here is going to lead to a lot more successes. The Abraham Accords, and it's indisputable that the UAE is the major co-partner here. The Abraham Accord shows that it truly succeeds. People to people have to flourish, people to people relationships. And that's what we're seeing here. And at the Abraham Accord level, we see that business relationships and verifiable economic opportunities, these will help make peace efforts a great success. Not only business efforts are needed for this, also cultural, academic, and scientific, but business can really lead the way. And I'll tell you, everyone in the Jewish and Israel and the Israeli communities are so excited about the Dubai relationship. Every area where I go, people can't wait for this pandemic to get over because they want to get in a plane and go to Dubai.
Thank you, Mark. Very, very important indeed. Booney and Consul General Shaheen, please. Israel is famously known in a very, very famous book that a friend of mine wrote as the startup nation. And the UAE is increasingly being known, or is coming to be known as the scale-up nation. And here we have AeroFarms, which probably got a lot of its start working with Israel and has now gone to the UAE to start scaling up. So Booney and Consul General Shaheen, I want to hear you each say a few words about the reputations your countries have developed in this regard, with regard to collaboration in the tech scene and the innovation scene. Booney, you first, and then Abdullah, please.
Yes, thank you. Additional to what I said before, I just want to say that as far as I read, Citigroup estimated that the commercial potential between Israel and the Emirates are around even more than $3 billion. Just think about this magnitude of the relationship. But more than that, you said about Israel as a startup nation. So just to give you examples of the past few weeks, Dubai Startup Hub sponsors an Israeli startups who did what we call pitching or exposure event, where they actually pitched for their innovation and projects. And at the end of this month, Israeli and Emirates businessmen will meet at the FinTech Surge exhibition in Dubai. And later, Israeli cyber companies will participate in cyber tech in Dubai. So this is only 3 examples from the past few weeks. I could bring here a long list, and His Excellency Abdullah Shaheen can, I think, bring even more because he's probably more updated than me. But this shows us how much the potential is. And I'm saying again, from what I saw and from what the picture I got is of a very warm relationship. And I have to say, my first diplomatic post was in Jordan at the end of the 90s. And I cannot even start to express how big is the difference between the relationship I lived in while I was in Jordan than what I see now with the Emirates. So there are many, many reasons, but this is a real, I think, and I understand, a real warm relationship that people want to make business together. People want to meet and to do business. And this is real peace. I mean, this is the real thing, I would say.
Thank you, Booney. Abdullah, innovation and entrepreneurship are critical and core to what the UAE is trying to do today. Say a few words about that, please.
Well, Danny, you know, the UAE is a small and young country, and it has the 2nd largest economy in the Arab world. No small feat, considering it as it is only 50 years old and have about 10 million people. The UAE is good at building and leveraging partnership around the world because of the region, because of the culture. UAE can serve as a gateway between the US, MENA region, and Asia, while promoting the flow of businesses, investing, and talent.
Okay.
Hey, Danny.
Jose.
Hey, Danny, I was going to say, if
Let me get New Jersey in, Jose. So what's New Jersey doing to innovate?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm New Jersey is the state of innovation, so we're quite nestled in between the startup nation and the scale-up nation. And the one thing I will say for New Jersey, and I think the opportunity for the three of us, which as I sit here and start to realize the three of us are about the same size, but we all three punch above our weight. I think the biggest opportunity I think we have is the innovation in the life sciences area. Since COVID has happened, New Jersey has been a part of some of the biggest COVID responses, with Rutgers University coming out with the first saliva test and Johnson & Johnson coming out with probably one of the most talked about vaccines out there. What we've seen in New Jersey is we have 70 life science companies. If for those that aren't as familiar with New Jersey's life sciences, the rich history, we're known as the medicine chest of the world. And the one thing to point out, and since COVID, 70 companies are right now actively working on either COVID therapeutics, COVID testing, or part of the vaccination. And that is quite significant. And given the innovation and the talents that's both in the U.A.E. and Israel, I think it's probably one of the most synergistic areas that I think we should be really focusing on and finding a way to collaboratively work together between our tech, our tech fabric, and the companies that are calling New Jersey home from around the world, from the life sciences. And clean energy is one of the areas that New Jersey is really leaning in really heavily forward with creating one of the largest wind ports, and this governor has made one of the largest commitments to clean energy and offshore wind. And I think has one of the biggest, second to life sciences, I think one of the biggest areas and biggest potential for the three of us to start to work collaboratively together. And so I got to say, New Jersey's quite nestled in quite nicely there, and always welcomes the opportunity to collaborate even more on this.
Okay.
Dave, thank
Could I
you.
build on that and just make a pitch?
David, I was just going to ask you, regarding audio and Dubai Holding and innovation, can you tell us, for the companies listening on the phone or on the webinar, please say a few words about your experience working with them and how they've helped you promote your innovation even more.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me just quick make a pitch for the state. So New Jersey, so just building off what Jose said, we grow a plant to grow a protein to use as an ingredient to a therapeutic to treat highly symptomatic people of COVID-19. So we do a lot more than just grow plants for people, but in lots of applications, including new genetics and different things, but really tapping onto that ecosystem within the New Jersey and greater New Jersey area. The other two areas that are great for New Jersey is tapping into the capital markets, just like being right next to Wall Street. We're really in that ecosystem. Very easy for a business person to tap into those capital markets. And then the third is just tremendous talent, just people. We have people coming in from different areas, highly educated, and it's a great place to get talent to build a business. To your question, and we're seeing similar things in the U.A.E. Great to get capital, great for talent resources as well, and expand from there. So specifically audio, our deal, I mean, these are very professional people, audio and Dubai Holdings. They're people that come from top like banks and highly professional top firms, and doing a deal, I said earlier, it's like what people say they do. So some places you always have to watch out, some parts of the world, like where are the gotchas and are people going to retrade terms? I have not found that at all. I find people very honorable, very trustworthy, and very professional. The legal system's very methodical, and you can count on it, and get things done. So high degree of confidence in working with certainly both audio and Dubai Holdings, and very high level of trust and high level of likability and excitement to continue to do business. So it's just a good foundation, a lot of commonalities to really build future opportunities with.
One or two, just in a sentence or two, one or two things that surprised you about doing business in the UAE that you didn't expect, in a good way, negative way, neutral way, just something that you know, sort of coming at it, you just didn't expect.
The amount of people that, two things. One, if there was like a snag in a deal and we needed to get upper level support, even though these are huge organizations, we were able to quickly get upper level support to get a deal done and move through issues. And then the second is the excitement for welcoming us to the region and supporting our efforts. So when we needed support with whatever it is, it's a relatively small community where people, the business community knows each other, and people are willing to help a hand to get things done.
I got it. I got it. That's wonderful. We talked a little bit about cultural ties and people to people and values, common values before with the secretary. But I wanted to make sure I gave Consul General Shaheen and Booney a chance to say a few words about this aspect of a relationship, because at the end of the day, this is probably the most important aspect of a relationship like this. So Consul General Shaheen, if you could just say a few words about, for those on the webinar, the shared values that you think the UAE has with the US, with the United States in our relationship today.
Thank you, Danny. The values upon which the US was founded, opportunity, prosperity, community, are also what guided the UAE leadership when the nation was established 5 decades ago. The UAE and the US are close friends and strong allies, working together to promote regional security, create economic prosperity, and address pressing global challenges. The UAE has developed alongside the US in coalition counterterrorism, civilizing, and peacekeeping missions 6 times more than any other Arab military. Business partnerships are creating jobs and opportunities in both countries across sectors like aerospace, manufacturing, high technology, real estate, and logistics. The UAE is committed to openness, inclusiveness, and freedom of worship, values shared with the US. Over 200 different nationalities live in the UAE. Working together to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, eradicate neglect tropical diseases, address climate changes, explore spaces, and etc. Danny.
Excellent. Booney, Israel's a democracy. The US is a democracy. We have that in common, but we have a lot of other cultural and social ties in common too. Say a few words about that. And again, in reaction to what Abdullah said, please.
So actually, His Excellency Shaheen said the right words, and I don't have a lot to add to this, but I choose the background that I have here because I think it symbolized the fact that 2 countries, 2 nations, 2 cultures can merge together to one picture, to one story. And I think that we didn't talk much about COVID-19, which is actually the big story of the past year and still is in everywhere in the world. But I think that COVID-19 taught or teach us right now that we have to look for what is our common interest, what is our common goals, and not what bringing us together and not what's separating us. And I think that we are in the Middle East for too many years are talking in language or working in kind of exchange of what is separating us, what is our differences other than what put us together. And New Jersey, United States, and of course the United Emirates and Israel are all places that became what they are because people were brave enough to make true the dreams they dream. And I think that's the important thing. If we find the language that we can talk together, it can be a language of art, it can be language of business, it can be any language we have, but we have many languages that we can talk together and understand each other. And make this background when flags are up together and coming one picture of united area, united world, That's, I think, is the main goal, and that is the essence of the Abraham Accords, and that's what important it is. And at the end of the day.
Thank you, Booney, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, this webinar is meant to be the first in a series of engagements among our organizations in trying to create more awareness about the opportunities in this historic Abraham Accords. Mark, Andrew, Jose, I just want to give you the chance to say a few words of any thoughts that you have on what we should be doing next for our audience. And Andrew, in particular, if you look through the Q&A or the comments, if you see any that need to be brought up before we close here, happy to have that as well. But Mark, why don't you go ahead if you have some
yeah.
thoughts.
So what I would say here is what we see here is so many times the pie has to be divided. More for you means less for me. What we have here is we have a rare opportunity. The pie can grow here. It's a win-win for all of us. And what we're hearing and seeing this today shows us that. We should not and could not lose the enthusiasm that we started with here today. As we're on the eve of our Jewish holiday of Passover, what I would say and recommend to all of us, that we go from strength to strength, that we build on what we started here. We have terrific people here in New Jersey. We have terrific people at the U.A.E, the consulate. Danny, you and your team, this is just the start, and I'm really excited about what we're building on.
Andrew, Jose, do you want to say something? Andrew, do you want, is there a question that must be answered from the audience, or can we follow up afterwards?
I think that we can follow up. I'll just sort of generally say that I think there's a question generally about medical research that came up, and I think that that's one area, and Jose has been really fantastic. I think at leading the charge for trying to build bridges across medical cooperation in New Jersey internationally. So I would defer to him a little bit more, and that's something that I've and Mark and I have experimented with the New Jersey Israel Commission, particularly during COVID. Connecting Israeli and New Jersey pharma companies together to cooperate. I would just want to conclude and just really, Danny, thank you and your team for making this happen. And it's really just such a pleasure to see you, Consul General, joining what has really become, I think, a very strong partnership of New Jersey and Israel. I sent today a list of all the things that we've done, in the past few months. It's really been tremendous. And I look forward to working with you, Consul General, and following up on some of these great initiatives so that we can build a stronger relationship, not just with the U.A.E, but to take advantage of this trilateral relationship. So I just want to thank everyone for that.
Thanks, Andrew. Jose.
I think the best next step is we grab David and we grab some of his products and lettuce and some companies from New Jersey. And I think we actually take His Excellency's offer and we do actually go visit U.A.E. And Booney, just jump across on a quick flight with us and we'll take the U.A.E direct flight to the Emirates flight.
Well, David's
Absolutely.
opening an office and an operation there. He can just host us on the ground. When we
Even better.
Jose, quick plug. Jose, just a quick plug that I think one of the guests who joined us today reached out was from El Al, and it's a great opportunity just to remind that we have El Al, Emirates, and I'm not sure I have to check, but I think some of our U.S. airlines, obviously New Jersey's a hub for United, but many provide great service to not just Tel Aviv, but to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and it's great that we have that expansion of Emirates coming in. I hope I'll join you, Jose.
Yeah, you're always more than welcome to. I think there's enough seats on the plane for everyone.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the close of today's session.
Danny, if you don't mind me, I
Yeah,
would like
please,
to answer one of the questions that was related to Mars mission. I think it was in the Q&A section. The Mars mission, I'm sorry, just the name just disappeared. I don't know whom am I talking to, but the Mars mission of the U.A.E was one of its first kind, basically. It's a satellite that the U.A.E been building since, I think, 6 to 7 years. We called it Hope, to send out to be part of the space nations that are exploring Mars. And the U.A.E decided to be part of the great countries. And it's actually, I think the UAE is actually the number 6 or number 5 only countries that are actually exploring the Mars. And Hope probe, which is Al-Amal, as I mentioned, is actually the first Arab probe to be on Mars. And it will explore and study basically Mars. So it's not entering Mars, it's actually on the atmosphere of Mars. Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
Yes, thanks, Abdullah. And it needs to be said that you partnered closely with a lot of critical and important U.S. Institutions in sending that probe to Mars. And congratulations, we're all thrilled for its success. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Danny.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our session today. We're coming to time. And please follow up with any one of our organizations. We can put you in touch with the others as appropriate, as necessary. And we look forward to bringing all of you more information about the opportunities in this amazing trilateral relationship that's developing. With that, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.